It's become a bit of a meme that Vasily high-tech Lomachenko downloads information about his opponents during the first few rounds. But the thing is, it's absolutely true. So today, we're gonna look at 3 fights where Lomachenko picked up on certain flaws in his competitor's boxing within the first few rounds, and then examine how he used those weaknesses against them. By the end of this video, it should be clear that all Lomachenko needs is for an opponent to make one mistake. He could then capitalize on that mistake to establish a few offensive tools, then build up from there until he's landing nearly at will. And maybe it'll make a bit more sense how so many skilled warriors have simply given up, quitting on their stools. So let's get to it. We'll start with Rodriguez. Early in the fight, Lomachenko picked up on how Rodriguez rhythmically adjusted his guard. He then timed his jabs to capitalize on the brief moments Rodriguez left himself open. Allow me a moment to explain. There are a number of valid reasons for boxers to rhythmically adjust their guard, such as placing their hands in different positions so they can punch from different angles. But maybe more importantly, a fluid guard gives opponents less chances to pick up on an opening and then target it over and over. After all, every type of guard will have a few openings, no matter what. In fact, Lomachenko uses the openings in his own guard to draw an opponent's punch so that he can counter. And Lee has some great videos on this drawing tactic on his channel. But this was obviously not the case with Rodriguez, who became more and more bewildered by Lomachenko's jab as the fight went on. Rodriguez preferred lowering and raising his lead arm as he stepped, but because he did this with such consistent rhythm, Lomachenko was able to time his jab to pierce through the brief opening Rodriguez presented. He found the perfect angle for this, coming up from underneath each time Rodriguez raised and widened his guard. In fact, of the 116 jabs I counted Loma landing cleanly throughout the fight, 91 of them landed as Rodriguez raised his lead arm. By the last few rounds, Lomachenko had the timing down so well, he was landing at will. Whether Lomachenko consciously picked up on the opening in his opponent's guard, or simply found his timing over the first few rounds, is irrelevant. What does matter is that once Lomachenko had established his jab, the primary weapon for setting up offense in boxing, he could build on it to ramp up the pressure, setting up long combinations with complex footwork. These included some of his best-known tricks, like his Matrix Shuffle and Matador Feints. Lomachenko finished the fight in the 9th. So we've seen how Lomachenko can exploit a hole in his opponent's defenses. But now, let's look at how he can exploit a hole in his opponent's offense. In his fight against Martinez, Lomachenko first tried to counter his jab in a number of different ways, testing which worked best. Countering with a hook absolutely did not work, and Martinez was too good at following Lomachenko for him to time a counter by stepping or slipping outside. But what did work well was ducking and slipping inside. And while intercepting with a counter jab didn't work too well, returning a counter cross did. And just as in the last example, once Lomachenko found a way through, he did not stop exploiting it. By punishing Martinez each time he jabbed, he did what's known as taking away an opponent's punch. Martinez became so hesitant to jab that he started leading with his cross, which ironically gave Lomachenko some trouble at first. A cross can be harder to defend in an open stance because the southpaw orthodox dynamic leaves the open side more, well, open. But once again, after working through his options, Lomachenko found an answer, stepping inside while controlling Martinez's head and arm. With his jab taken away and none of his power punches landing, Martinez went down in the 5th. Alright, one last example. We've looked at how Lomachenko exploits an opponent's offense and defense. But now, let's look at how he deals with an opponent's counters. Unlike the last fight showcased, against Walters, Lomachenko seemed intent on moving to the outside, Perhaps this was because Walters carried his lead hand low at times. Regardless, Lomachenko's intentions were quickly stifled. Walters immediately countered Lomachenko's jab and outside movement with a lead body hook, targeting the opening that Lomachenko's jab had created. This was a great strategy that was probably thought up in preparation for the fight, but Lomachenko found a few ways around it almost immediately. The first was to simply set up the outside shuffle with a cross rather than a jab, ensuring that his lead arm was kept in place to guard his side. The second was to control Walters' lead arm as he jabbed his way in, stifling Walters' defense. And even though Walters attempted this same counter several more times, he was never successful again. Lomachenko would either block or control the path of the punch. On top of this, Lomachenko found an effective counter to Walters' jab. Walters tended to drop his hand slightly after throwing, so Lomachenko was able to corkscrew his lead over his shoulder. Once again, whether Lomachenko noticed these vulnerabilities or not doesn't matter. What matters is that he logged in his mind that these were working and continued to build on them until Walters went down. This is why Lomachenko's opponents give up on their stools. It's not the punishment so much as the feeling of hopelessness. These are professionals who have dedicated their lives to reaching the highest levels of boxing, and they have no idea how they keep getting hit. They quit not because they're unwilling to take more punishment, but because they see no way back. This is the skill of Vasily Lomachenko. If you'd like to learn more, you can check out my books on footwork, power, and defense, linked below. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.